Hello, Diana here. I am here to give you listeners an extra content warning about today's Groom Scroll. The documentary we talk about today, Great Photo, Lovely Life, is a really good documentary, but it is heavy and it does discuss in detail incest, pedophilia, child sexual abuse. So if you are not in a good headspace to listen to that, don't do that to yourself. Listen to your body. This episode will be here if and when you're ever ready. So, as always, listen with care. Okay, goodbye.
Welcome to Groom Scroll. Bum, bum, bum. Like, you know what I mean? There should be like a little intro.
That's going to be it. I'm just going to add some noise to it.
Adjusting the view from it's my job as a survivor to get revenge on this person. And maybe it's more the way that we should look at it, and a healthier way to view it is my responsibility to demand that these systems hold these people accountable, because those ramifications will ruin that person's life. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, you and I have been a thorn in the fucking side of every goddamn system we have had to deal with for the last 3 years, because we had to be to get anything done. And this goddamn documentary we're about to talk about is another shining example of what happens when you don't. When you don't make those phone calls, when you don't ask for people to be held accountable, when you don't fucking talk about it. Anyways, girl, I am piped up. I'm hyped up. I'm piped up. I'm hooped up. I got my seltzer water, so I'll belch right into the microphone for the next hour.
Oh, great. I have my non-alcoholic beer, so I'll be doing the same thing. Are we ready to get into this documentary? Holy shit.
Woof. Woof.
Great photo, lovely life. Hello and welcome back.
Welcome, dear listener, to, man, I don't know. This might be the most upsetting Groom Scroll so far.
Yeah, you know what? Yes, because keep this between us was upsetting, like anger. There was definitely anger in this one too, but this one felt more like disgust. Like this one felt like
icky
as hell. There was a lot of screaming at the TV.
Okay, so we are talking about Great Photo, Lovely Life, a documentary that came out when?
March 2023. It is a HBO documentary.
Wow, that was not that long ago.
It follows photojournalist Amanda Mustard. Awesome name, by the way. So she's a photojournalist, and I love what she says about being a photojournalist, that she loves that part of her job is exposing the truth about something. I wrote that down. It really got me thinking. But she's a photojournalist, and she is the granddaughter of William Flickinger. Is his name?
Such an unfortunate name,
right?
Given the circumstances. Yes, I think that was correct.
And he is was a chiropractor who sexually abused so many children. She goes back home and documents her journey in trying to do something to give his victims some kind of acknowledgement.
Her family has a dark secret that they're never talking about, and she makes a documentary trying to uncover the truth of it. I mean, I think at the core that was the initial quest, right? Is just, what the fuck happened? What is this guy's story? What is our family's story? And then from there, just snowballed into everything that it turns into of, reaching out to survivors and trying to get accountability for them, and also trying to find a way to hold him responsible or contemplate having him held responsible. It's a trip, man. Like, obviously going into it, I knew, given the subject matter of our podcast, I was like, well, I know someone's going to be problematic in this documentary, right? But it starts out with her and her mom going to visit her grandfather in his like assisted living place. And it was like the first 3 seconds, I was like, this guy is creeping me out. He's just so like, oh, my pretty girls, they're so beautiful. You know, when I was talking to Carl about it, and I was like, it's hard because I do feel like that's how men talk to females and their family. And I do think that line can be weird sometimes with uncles and grandpas and even dads. You know, I feel like brothers are a little bit less likely. I feel like brothers are more likely to be like, ugh, stupid, ugly dummy. Like, they tend to be, like, mean. But, like, there is a strange affection that happens, I think, within families. And not saying that all families that men are, like, molesters or something, but, like, it can feel uncomfortable, I think, to be a woman in a family, and there are men in your family, even if they've never abused you, that can make you kind of feel icky, right? The way that they talk to you or the way that they, like, compliment your looks or, like, talk
Mhm.
about your body can feel very strange. And so I
Yeah.
in that first, like, few minute scene, it was an interesting thing where I was like, "Is this just a normal grandpa who's trying to be sweet and it's just landing a little weird? Or is this person a monster?" And it was like, "Oh, this person's a monster." Got it. Like,
Yeah. It
immediate.
immediate. He immediately, and it's interesting too because you get that feeling from him, like, from the
Mhm.
get, but then you see all of these people who live the women who live in his community who are like, "Oh, he's such a wonderful man. He's a lovely person." But
Yeah.
it's
Except
so
for that one lady. Yeah, because she says something like, "Try to behave yourself," and like, clearly is trying to be like, "Dude, you're a fucking creep," or is just kinda, like, kinda calling him out.
so all of those exchanges were just really weird because yeah, same, like, he creeped me out from the beginning too, but they, I mean, get into it kind of right away. Like, she starts asking him if he had always had sexual feelings towards children, towards
Yeah.
young girls.
And we're talking
And
young girls. We were talking
yeah,
4-year-olds. Young, young kids.
and he's just, I mean, he's talking about it. She's asking him and he's like, "Yeah, I used to fight my with myself about it, but it seems so strange. There were times that some of these little girls would almost throw themselves at me. They wanted to learn
Ugh.
things. They were experimental. For me, it was too much of open temptation." So, yeah, like, from, like, the first 10 minutes, it's very
Mhm.
clear that this he is a monster. He's not just a nice old grandpa who is saying, "Oh, my precious girl, so you're so
Yeah.
what," no.
He is legitimately a pedophile, a serial pedophile. And yeah, within that same scene, he says, "I just fell into it." And it made me think of our abuser and the way that it was like, I couldn't control myself and I was incapable of resisting the wiles of these girls. And it's fascinating to me on a psychological level, right? Of like what is happening in this person's brain that they're justifying what they did. And I truly believe in the case of like this guy in this documentary has a mental health condition. I mean, like this is obsessive behavior. Do you know what I mean? Like you can't
Oh, yeah.
that
Uh,
something is
y
wrong. And I find it
yes.
fascinating. Like what is the cause? What is the solution? What is the treatment? Like I don't know. I haven't read up on these things. I'm sure people have, but like psychologically I find it just mind-boggling.
And so I think part, like, a big theme, and I think what Amanda, the filmmaker, is trying to get, and the granddaughter of Bill, I think they call him, is taking a look at generational trauma
Yeah.
and the cycle of just passing along this abuse to generation after generation. And so Amanda is asking her grandpa about how, like, his childhood and what it was like,
Mhm.
and he said that he remembers, she's like, what was your dad like?" And the first thing he says is that he liked women. That's a core memory of who his dad was, is that his dad liked to party with the Zippo lighter at the Zippo lighter parties, and would come home with lipstick on and his clothes all disheveled, and Bill's mom would never say anything. So, like,
Mhm.
and then his dad would also physically abuse him because he wanted a girl. And there's just, so it's the classic nature and nurture. If there's already
Yeah.
something there and then your environment is just also shitty.
Was his dad's obsession with wanting a daughter and not getting one, A, that his dad was also a fucking creep, right? And, like, wanted to
Yeah.
abuse a girl, or B, did that trigger his obsession with little girls? Because his dad was obsessed like, he couldn't be
Yeah.
this thing. Like, his dad wanted a little girl, and he couldn't be a little girl. So then was him hurting little girls some kind of, like, deep-seated fucking daddy issue, revenge
Yeah.
fantasy thing. Like, it just that's where I get really like, I just wanna understand, and I don't think that, don't try to be logical with illogical people. Like, you just can't. There's not gonna be like a, "Oh, if you drink orange juice, you're gonna be a pedophile." Like, there's not like a checklist of just like
Yeah.
what makes it or doesn't make it, but it is hard to not try to find the roots
Mm,
of it. And I think you're right. I think a majority of the documentary is about generational trauma because as much of the movie is about what he specifically did and who he abused and how he got away with it for so long, well, forever essentially. It's also about all the people along the way that fucking didn't say anything and didn't stand up and didn't push back and didn't talk about it and how, they played just as big of a role in his behavior. Not maybe not as big of a role, but like they played a big role in him
yeah.
continuing his behavior. Definitely made me think of just kind of what we've been talking about on the pod about, all the systems that are around these people. But it's interesting to me because so much of it is about the grandmother, so Bill's wife. There's a lot about how she was really aware of what he was doing and she wasn't coming forward, and we just talked about Bill's mom maybe knowing her husband was cheating on her and she didn't come forward. And I think it's so easy to initially have that thought of, well, what the fuck is wrong with her? Like, why isn't she doing something? And it's like,
Mhm.
women weren't allowed to have their own bank accounts until like the 70s.
Mhm.
You
1974,
you
you could have a
couldn't
credit card without
just
your husband's name.
yeah, you couldn't just leave. You literally couldn't leave. And it sounds like there was a lot of physical abuse going on within that family as well. And so then you have to comprehend, okay, they're also victims.
Yeah.
But as you've said before in the podcast, like if us as victims don't face what happened to us and process what happened to us, we are liable to participate in someone else's abuse. And I think this is a perfect example of how that happens because all of them, up until Amanda and her sister, the current
Mm,
generation, all of them are participants until now. You know what I mean? And I think that that's something that our generation and the generation below us or behind us is trying to fucking do, right? Is like stop the generational trauma because it
yeah.
really
Like, let's just
is,
talk about it.
yeah. It's amazing to me how common it is that families just do not talk about this kind of stuff.
I mean, that's what Amanda's mom, Debbie, says, like, pretty early on in the documentary is, like, that her belief or what her way of operating is that there's no use in bringing up the past because
Yeah.
you're not gonna change it, and I do feel like that is what a lot of families, a lot of adults, that's what they tell themselves is like, "Oh, well, what's the point of talking about this? It's not gonna change anything. It happened." And they'd rather just not talk about it because it's so uncomfortable
Yeah.
than talk through it.
But the thing is like, yes, you can't change the past, but you could change the future.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
that fucking simple. But man,
Yeah.
I thought this was a fascinating documentary though. Like I did not see it going the way that it went in the end, but I don't want to jump ahead too much. Yeah, I also really thought it was noticeable at the beginning when that the grandpa was just so open about it. Like he was just so calmly discussing it. Like, "Oh yeah, and then I made her do this, and then oh yeah, I did that to her and they liked it
Oh,
and I
yeah.
liked it." I was just kind of like flabbergasted to see somebody so openly discussing sexually assaulting children. But then when, it was clear that they kind of got upset and he said, "Well, that's what you get for coming down here."
Yes. You want to at first, like, I was trying to, like, feel him out, like, okay, so he's talking about this, he's saying he's gonna be honest and,
Mhm.
forthcoming, and a part of me was like, okay, so is part of him really trying to reckon with what he did, and that's why he's just, like, letting it out? Or is part of this also just that delusion? Because,
Yeah.
yeah, like, talking so casually and then going into with his daughter right the fuck
Yeah.
next to him and talking for her and saying, "Oh, she loved
Mhm.
it and I loved it,
Can
and, oh, it was
you
quite an engagement."
Can you imagine? I do not know how they sat in that room. Can you imagine? And I would also just like to say, I feel like we try to make it very clear on this pod, and I feel like I've said this a lot of times that like trauma is not comparative, and what happens to one person does not necessarily mean it's better or worse than what happens to another. But I would really like to acknowledge that I do truly think that incest has to be one of the most heart-wrenching versions of abuse because I I just cannot imagine the heartbreak of your parent abusing you. I just it sounds so
Yeah.
soul crushing because it's like the one person in the world, the two people in the world that are supposed to fucking care about you the most and are supposed to protect you and are supposed to love you do one of the worst things that can happen to you is just such an overwhelming thing to even think about. So I've just been thinking about the lot since watching it of just like I truly, truly am in awe of people who have had to process that. It just sounds absolutely horrific. Like I just it's like making me want to cry just thinking about it. Like it just sounds horrible. And I don't know how she sat there and listened to him talk about abusing her and then also said that she liked it. Like it was just so disgusting and awful.
In this book that I'm reading, Come As You Are, I'm still reading the same book that I was a few months ago. It's amazing though. Dr. Emily Nagoski, Come As You Are. And there's this chapter about attachment,
Mhm.
and she talks about they're not bonobos, the rhesus monkeys, the monster
Okay.
mother, with that experiment where they took monkeys and they made like a model mother and they made it like kind of have like carpet or fur and like made it soft. So like the baby monkeys thought that was their mom. And after some time, the robotic monkey mom would start like poking the babies like with spikes and like would spit at them or like stuff, doing things scare the baby or to push the baby away. And it
Yeah.
didn't matter what happened, the baby monkey would always come back because that's mom.
Yeah.
And that is so fucking heartbreaking that I mean, eh, you see it too with Debbie, like that's her dad, and with
Yeah.
Amanda, the part, where because Amanda is mad at her grandpa, like, there's a lot
Yeah.
of rage there, there's a lot of, like, he she says, as the granddaughter of this piece of shit, like, it's not and there's no secret how Amanda feels about her grandpa, but when it comes to that moment where she plays the recording for him, like, she hurts for him
Yeah.
because that's her grandpa. And yeah, it is I can't imagine either. I wasn't sure if I was gonna talk about this, but I think I found a way to make it vague enough. But in my family, my grandpa, he did sexually abuse a family member. And I remember after this family member came forward and told the rest of the family, for me, like my mom asked my sister and my brother if anything had ever happened, and and I told her no, as far as I could remember, there was nothing that came to mind except for one time. I was probably like 14 and he said I was dressed like a whore.
Wow.
Um yeah, but that was the one thing. And like since then I remembered this other time, and I didn't tell my mom about this one, but this other time when I was probably like 10 or 11, and I was staying at my godparents' house, and he was at the table with my godmother and one of my aunts, and it was a sleepover, like, I had spent the night at my godparents' house, and so I was wearing, like, pajamas, and it was, like, a spaghetti strap pajama and, like, shorts, and
Mhm.
I just remember him looking at me and, like, him, like, his eyes, like, following me, like, I remember being at the sink and still, like, seeing him looking at me and being so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so when this family member, like, came forward and said what happened to them, I just my decision was made. Like, I wasn't interested in still really having a relationship with him, and it really did bother me
Mm.
to see some of my other family members still treating him so delicately,
Yeah.
and I still feel very conflicted about all of his he passed, but, like, sometimes when I hear, like, family talk about him or, like, posts about him and, like, in his memory on Facebook, like, on his birthday or
Mhm.
anniversary, I'm like I just think about the one family member and their parent too was still very involved in the end of my grandpa's life, and it's something we don't talk about, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's worth talking about because I think every family has that story. I truly, truly do believe every family has
It's
that
so
story.
sad.
Like, it really is. Like, I don't know official details, but there are rumors in my family as well about things. So, but it's one of those things where the people involved aren't ready to talk about it. So, I don't know who may or may not have done it to them. So, it's just this fucking ambiguous thing. And suspicions and I think it's really common. And I know for a fact I have friends that
Yeah.
I know for a fact were abused by family members. Like, it is really common and it's heartbreaking. And I think as betrayed as you and I have felt by the school systems and by even our own families to an extent, right? Like for their inability to protect us and our abuse, I cannot imagine feeling if all of it was legitimately your family. Like, I cannot
Yeah.
imagine if it was like the abuser is your family, all the people and the systems that let them have access to you and then did not listen to you and then did not hold them accountable were all your fucking family. Like, this just
Ugh,
sounds so
yeah.
overwhelming. And unfortunately, I think what happens to a majority of those survivors is they end up losing their family and they end up being the one that is on the outside of everything, either because A, the family wants to tell them to shut up and go away, or B,
Mhm.
they don't want to fucking be around these pieces of shit, which is like understandable, but still on top of all the trauma of your abuse, you just lost your whole fucking family. I think there's something so much emotionally and psychologically damaging about incest. Like, I really do think it is a whole different beast that I can't even begin to kind of wrap my head around. And honestly, something that like stresses me out when like family members do talk about things of like, oh, I don't know, maybe this person there is I hate to say this because I think I'm obviously a person that is like, bring it to light, talk about it. We have to bring things out, but like honest to God, like if it terrifies me to think about the idea of if it comes out like, oh, this beloved family member of yours that you have liked your whole life is a fucking monster, like, scares the shit
Mm,
out of me. And it's one of those
yeah.
things where, like, there is a part of my brain that's like, "I don't wanna know." And I know that's a fucked up thing to say as a person who's having a podcast about exposing abuse, but, like, it's terrifying. Like, it is
You're not
terrifying.
alone. I
Yeah.
think we're human, you're human. It is. It's again, that's your family. That's home. That's your safety. Uh Even if it doesn't or hasn't always felt safe. Like that I think especially when it is something when it is incest, when it is happening in the family and the family is your family's not doing anything to stop it or intervene. I mean, what else to do but stop talking about it? And I think
Yeah.
that's why it does like you said, Amanda and her sister, Angie,
Mhm.
they are stopping that cycle. They are talking about it. Like, that really
Yeah.
is it sounds so simple, but it's also super fucking hard and complicated, but talking about it is what stops this cycle, acknowledging it.
We should continue talking through the rest of this documentary
Okay,
because
yes.
I wanna talk about the employer at the chiropractic office,
I
the
wanna
husband and
talk
wife
about
couple.
yes, okay, let's talk about them.
Those 2 motherfuckers, I was like, I holy shit, so infuriating. So, she goes and talks to the people that owned the chiropractic office that he worked in. So, he got busted in one town, the first town, for abusing a child, and pretty much got a slap on a wrist, got, like, 2 years probation or something, and they just cut town and they moved to a different town. When he got a job as a chiropractor at this new office, this couple owned the place then, the practice, and they still own it now, and they were interviewing them and asking if they knew anything about his background. And the wife was like, "No. If we had known anything, we never would have hired him." And then the husband was like, "Well, we did know, but I just chose to ignore it. Or I just chose to like risk it and just hire him anyways." And she was like, "Well, but if we had known really like what kind of trouble he got in," and it very much seems like the husband did know.
Do you
Like,
think
cause
that she didn't?
or she's pretending that she didn't. They had a weird fucking vibe, dude. I don't know, but she seemed very like not interested. They both seemed very uninterested in taking any responsibility. And I said this to Carl, is like, why is it so hard for this fucking generation? And I'm sure it's true of people our age too, but like, why is it so hard to just say, this guy applied for a job? I was given a heads up that he had a checkered past that may have involved abusing patients. I decided to hire him anyways, and that was a huge mistake. And because I hired this person and brought him into my business, he unfortunately had access to children and abused kids in this facility. And for that, I am deeply sorry. The problem is, we live in a goddamn society that by saying that, he could be sued, right? And so it stops him from saying it. But it's also infuriating because it's just basic accountability. And his own kid got abused. His own kid got assaulted by this guy. And they also did not acknowledge their part in that. They just said,
I
like, we couldn't believe it.
might have missed that part.
What?
What the
They talked
Barb
about how,
and whatever
yeah,
his name,
they
her?
talked about how they came into their house or the office or something. He was like laying on top of their daughter.
That was their daughter? I remember her talking about that. I remember them talking about that, but I
I
don't
think they
remember
said it
that
was
that
her
was their
daughter
daughter.
because that's when the wife was like, I wanted to puke. Like, she was like, I was so upset. I never would have thought that they would, like, then they'd
But
care.
okay,
Somebody at the church had pulled him aside and said, you need to keep an eye on this guy. And he said, and I decided to risk it. He knew before he hired him that, like, there was something about
there
this
was
guy that was
something.
like
Okay.
sus. And then,
And then eventually they'd fire him and then filed a complaint with the board. And then the board had a hearing, and a lot of people showed up and defended him, which then caused a lot of tension with their friends and family. And he did lose his license, but he didn't go to prison.
yeah, and I think that they walked in on him like laying on top of their own daughter, which might have been the thing that led them to actually firing him.
I
We
don't
both just watched this. This is hilarious.
I know, but yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that couple was really fascinating and really complicated because
Oh my
then
gosh. Yeah, go ahead.
Bonnie, one of the
Mm,
victims,
that
Bonnie,
Amanda
who,
reaches out to. Wait, can we talk about what Amanda does to reach out to
yes,
victims? Okay, so Amanda, it's very clear to Amanda that no one talks about this in her family. Her mom said that she doesn't know anything about what happened. They weren't allowed to read newspapers, whatever, whatever. So Amanda's mission, and I wanted to actually hear your thoughts about this, Sarah, because we've talked about drudging things up for people and how we feel about that. Amanda, she shares a little bit about her abuse, her sexual assault, that she was raped, and how for her, like so many of us, not getting that acknowledgement
yeah,
from the people involved really hurts, and it
hmm,
makes it hard to quote unquote move on. And so her goal is she wants to try to hold her grandpa accountable and get an acknowledgement for who knows how many of his victims. And so what she does is she goes through his paperwork and finds potential former patients and sends them a letter basically saying, I'm going to paraphrase so hard right now, but we know what happened to you. We're so sorry what happened to you. We're trying to make things right in whatever way we can. If you're interested in talking more, let us know. If not, that's fine too. And so she hears back from a few people, and Bonnie is one of those people. But before
hmm.
you talk a little bit about Bonnie, what did you think of the letter that she sent and how she went about
Well,
it?
the letter made me think of you and I messaging all of our classmates. I mean, you're just cold contacting a ton of people. And I did like the part where she said, I feel like every one of these envelopes is a tiny bomb I'm about to drop into people's lives. Cause that's 100%
Yeah.
how it felt when we were doing it. And it still feels, I still feel that way sometimes, even doing the pod, because I know for a fucking fact, because we have had people reach out to us since we started this podcast, that this is dredging up shit for them, not only about our abuser, but other piece of shit monsters out there, because unfortunately our experience is not unique. And it is a mixed bag of feeling like you're giving somebody an open door to walk through if they want to walk through it. And if you're in the right headspace, knowing how healing that could be for that person, but also knowing that if that person's not in the right headspace, that you just opened up like a gaping void of horror for a person that you can't fucking close. And just
Yeah.
knowing that you don't have control over how this is gonna land for somebody else. And I think that's what I like about this documentary is I think it just brings up so many interesting questions. It's very clear, like, yes, pedophile, bad, but everything else surrounding it is very gray. Like, it is very like, does Amanda have the right to send these letters to all these strangers, right? Like, do we have the right to be mad at all of the women in this family who were complicit and didn't stop this man when they were also victims? Like, there's just, it's so complicated. And I think that's what's fascinating about it. Cause I think it's a good reminder for all of us that, like, this shit is not black and white. Like, a lot of the structures around it are just so complicated, and the relationships and the way that trauma manifests in people
Mm,
is so different.
yeah. Oh, okay. You're about to get into Bonnie, but we also got to talk about Angie. Because talk
Oh,
about
poor
trauma and how
Angie.
it manifests.
Yeah. Pick a
Should we talk
lane.
about Angie first?
I mean, we're going to have to edit the fuck out of this because I think we're rambling, but yes. Yeah, so Angie is Amanda's sister,
Older sister,
older
Debbie's
sister.
first child. Debbie's the mom.
So she, same grandpa. So just to make it very clear, Debbie, the daughter of Bill, was abused by her father. She was sexually abused by her father growing up. How much of that she had processed at the time that she had Angie, we won't know. We don't know, right? Because clearly it wasn't something they were talking about in the family. I think there was probably a certain amount of it that was normalized to her because if that's what you grow up in, you think that's normal. But she got married very young, had Angie very young, and then got divorced pretty quickly and moved back in with her parents. Her parents, one of them being a pedophile, a serial pedophile, her father. And I think, at least for me, I don't want to speak for you, Diana, but like my initial instinct was, bitch, what are you doing? Like, why would you put your kid in this environment? But
Yeah.
again, it's that question of the time period, the era, her financial situation. Maybe she didn't have friends. Like, it's like she said it very much like the mom, Debbie, was very like, well, I had nowhere else to go. And it's like, is that true though? Is that true?
I couldn't help but think that. I
Or was
mean,
this just the path of least resistance?
yeah.
You know,
But I've never
and
been in that situation. So yeah,
no,
it is so complicated, like
it
you were
is
saying.
so complicated. And it sounds like her marriage was abusive. So she was trying to get out of a dangerous situation. And I think she even said, she's like, it's like I jumped out of the frying pan into the fire. Like she said that. Like Debbie, I think, tried to own the idea of like, I tried to get out of one situation that was bad and I leapt right back into my childhood that was bad. Not a shocker. The grandfather, Bill, ended up molesting Angie, Debbie's oldest child, her daughter. And that poor girl, like, started pulling her hair out from the anxiety and the trauma of all of it. And there's videotape coverage of her with like these giant bald spots on her head. Like, clearly something was happening to her. I don't know, man. I felt so much for Angie. Like, I just felt so bad for her because, yeah, again, it's just that layering of like, not only did your grandfather sexually abuse you, but your mom knowingly put you in that situation. And then she actively ignored obvious
Mm.
red signs that something was red flags, that something was wrong. And then it comes out later in the movie, she walked in on him abusing her at one point.
Yeah, it seemed like Debbie was in the beginning very much trying to own it, or at least like she was supporting Amanda through all of this, like going through paperwork and going to visit Bill and all of that. And it seemed like she was trying to make it right, she
Mhm.
said something really beautiful that I wrote down. So she's talking about, her experiences, and being in an abusive marriage and then leaving, and her experience with her dad, and saying that she wanted to do better. And she says, you can love a child without invading them, and that she wanted to like prove that to herself. So it
Mhm.
seemed in the beginning like she was really trying to make amends, but then once it turns into you knew and you
Yeah.
knowingly put your kids in the same situation, or the
Mhm.
person that hurt you the most, and like she couldn't accept that, and it
Yeah.
really just took a turn. And I mean, I was just really hard to watch. And Angie, towards the end of the documentary, they're watching part of Amanda's footage, and Debbie says something like, so Bill was just talking about the one time, according to him, that he
Yeah.
remembers with Angie, how it was just that one time, and how Debbie came in, and Debbie's like, oh, yeah, it was just that one time that I remember. And Angie kind of like breaks down, and she's like, hearing you talk about it so casually when you haven't even talked about it with me
Yeah.
is, like, really hurting me right now. Yeah, and I there was a lot that I felt like I could relate to in that conversation of,
Mhm.
I'm trying to tell you something that happened to me, and now you're making it you're playing that game of like, "Oh, well, I had it worse, and look at all the things that
Yeah.
I've been through," and
Mhm.
oh, man.
Yeah, it was yes, I would say there was, trying to pick my
Debbie.
words carefully, yes, I think there were some very relatable aspects of that conversation, and I was talking to Carl about it this morning over breakfast of just it was amazing to me to watch Debbie's gear shift
Yes.
from being Amanda's sidekick through this whole documentary and traveling and interviewing people and going through old documents and confronting her father and recording him and asking hard questions and reading victim impact statements to him and like really hard work. But the second she is asked to have any accountability for her own behavior, she just fucking completely changes. Like her face changed. I feel like
Mm.
her whole vibe changed. And it was
She
just like,
ran, like, she literally
oh,
left.
she just it was such a classic, like, adult children of emotionally immature parents. I was like, "Oh my god." Again, like, I just and it's so hard because I'm also trying to hold space for her as a fucking survivor, so it is just so complicated, and I think it really just goes back to the idea of, like, unresolved shit fucking just
Mm.
keeps going, and you have to deal with it, or else this is what happens, and unfortunately, she runs away from both of her daughters, and there's a audio clip of her talking, I think, to Amanda, where she just is saying, "Well, I've
Mm.
ruined everyone's lives, and I should just leave and never see anyone ever again because I'm so terrible," which is so manipulative and unproductive, and not at all what either girl was saying, either daughter had been saying. They just
Yeah.
want again, they want an acknowledgement, dude, of like, "I made a terrible decision and you paid the price and I'm fucking sorry." Like, why is it dear listeners, are you a parent who's not good at taking ownership of your behaviors? Why is it so hard? I don't understand. Because yeah, when she said to Debbie that, or when Debbie said that she had walked in on it, and she goes, "Well, he promised me he'd never do it again." It's like,
That is
dude,
not a thing.
it doesn't.
You're lying to yourself.
But again, it goes back to the idea of like, is that just that blind love of your father, right? That you want him to be something other than he is.
You want
And
him
you
to be
keep,
better.
yeah, and you keep going back to this person
Mm.
expecting them to suddenly change. And so, like, you're
Oh
just
my
trying to hold
god.
space for all of it at the same time of like, it's heartbreaking to think that she wanted her father to be different because he hurt her so deeply, but she also did not protect her fucking child at all.
And she's not at the time, in the documentary, she had not been able to even face that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she also says so after, like, the 1 year later when Amanda is interviewing her mom again, Debbie, on camera, she's still saying those things of,
Yeah.
"Well, he promised me. He gave me his word, and I believe," like, it's still an excuse to her, like, that's still what
Mhm.
she is telling herself, and
Yeah.
Angie too talks about how her grandma so after Bill got fired from, the Herds, that older couple that we were talking about, they became like traveling salespeople. Him
Ugh.
and his wife became
Yeah.
like traveling salespeople, and so they like lived in an RV, like a camper. And Angie was with them at one point, and she I forgot how old she was. She was young though, like
Mhm.
probably under 10 years old, and she found lipstick and wrote on the mirror in the camper in big letters, "sex," and that her
Mhm.
grandma found it and just asked her, like, "Did you do this?" And Angie said, "Yes," and then that was it. Like,
Yeah.
the grandma was also a victim. So the mom
Mhm.
sorry. The grandma's real name apparently is Celestra, but Bill, the grandpa, hated her name so much that he made everyone call her Lois.
Which
So,
is
like,
so
that
fucked up.
is so fucked up and so, like, minimizing. Like, that is
Mhm.
dehumanizing your
Yeah.
wife. And that was her life. Like, that's who she had to live with. Apparently, Debbie tried taking her mom away from that situation. It did not go well, and then her mom never got away.
Well,
But
she did
it
get away.
is
She
well,
did get
she
away, and then she died 2 years later of cancer, the poor lady, so she got, like, a couple of months of being
ugh,
away from this guy before she got sick. It is heartbreaking to think about how many people, mostly women, but people in general, have just wasted their lives standing next to terrible people when they didn't have to. Again, I wanna hold space for the fact that, yeah, it's a lot easier to leave now than it was then, but, like, she was still with this guy in the '80s and '90s, like, she could have left, and she could have gotten away, but she was also in an emotionally and a mentally abusive and physically abusive relationship, so, again, it's that idea of, like, "Well, why didn't she just go? And why didn't she just
yeah.
this?" And it's like, dude, she was fucking being abused the whole time,
Mhm.
and who knows what he was doing to her? If this is what he was doing to kids, what was he doing to her? It is such a it is a good documentary. Like, I feel like it does such a good job of you can be a victim and a villain. Like, almost
Yeah.
every single person in this story is both. Not all of them, not like Angie and Amanda and Bonnie. I would not put them in that category, but, like, most of the other people, I would honestly say are
Yeah.
kind of playing both sides of the fence.
That is so well put, Sarah, and you have talked about how all of us are the villain in someone's story, and this is a really good documentary that portrays that. It also same with Keep This Between Us with Cheryl Nichols, just, like, the artwork that comes out of people
Mhm.
women telling a story about abuse is just beautiful. I think Amanda Mustard and her team did a really good job with the way that this documentary was put together.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the victims of Bill that Amanda was able to get in touch with.
Mhm.
Bonnie. Let's talk about Bonnie.
Bonnie was I liked Bonnie. I liked Bonnie a lot. Bonnie seemed like good people. Bonnie seemed like a person you and I could talk to.
I want to find Bonnie. Well, her name
Yeah.
is now Grace.
Yes.
She changes her name to Grace. I really want to find because she started a support group, but I'd love
Mhm.
to see if we could chat with her. Bonnie,
Yeah.
are you listening?
Bonnie, can
Oh,
you hear
Grace.
me? Gracie, can you see me? Yes, I liked Bonnie a lot. So Bonnie had been a victim of Bill's, I think when she was 4 at his chiropractic
Yeah.
office, but she got, I think she probably got one of the letters and responded to it. And then actually wanted to return back to the chiropractic office, which was very relatable for me because it was like my trauma road trip that I went on. So I really
I wrote
understood.
down Bonnie went on her own trauma tour.
Yeah, like, I really understood the motive, and I thought that she did a good idea of or good idea. I think she did a good job of articulating why, and it was kind of the idea of my brain has connected this physical space with this horrific experience. I want to go make a new memory in that space to try to, like, overwrite it a little bit, right? Or kind of reclaim the space, which was exactly why I did what I did. So, yeah, that whole part of watching her sit in the parking lot and being like, "I need to breathe." I was like, "Girl, been there." Like, you're doing what you need to be doing, but it doesn't feel good, and it feels really awful, and it maybe feels worse before it's gonna feel better. But I thought the goddamn again, the owners of that place in
Oh,
that scene with Bonnie, I wanted to smack them in the face the entire time watching it. It was like fingernails down a
the
chalkboard.
guy especially, like, he was so uncomfortable and was essentially, like, just shoving forgiveness in her
Mm.
face, and
Oh my
she had said
god.
previously, I mean, not that he
Yep.
knew this, but she had said previously, "Fuck the word forgive,
Yeah.
I hate it," and the fact that he's like, "Oh, you just have to forgive, you must forgive," and she says, "It's hard to forgive someone who doesn't wanna be forgiven," and
Mhm.
then he's like, "Hey, let's pray for you." But then he doesn't even do it. He's like, Wife, you do this, you pray." And then he
But then
just
he
like
fucking
is saying,
talks over her the
yeah,
entire time.
uh-huh.
Like, he's like,
Forgiveness, forgiveness. Yeah.
dude, first of all, Bonnie, high five, girl. Yes, fuck forgiveness, dude. Fuck the F word. So And then, yeah, so then he's kinda being like, "Well, if you don't forgive him, pretty much God's not gonna forgive you," was kind of the vibe, and it's like,
It
"What? What the fuck are you talking about?" The use of
uh,
religion in this documentary to, excuse me, explain away
mm,
Bill uses religion to just kinda be like, "Well, God's gonna hold me accountable."
yep. I'm gonna
Pretty much
be
like,
okay.
"I don't need to be held accountable on earth because 'cause God'll take care of it. Don't you
But
worry."
he says there's no sin that can't be forgiven. So
Oh
there's
my
not
god.
even, like,
Ugh.
there's nothing for him to be he's gonna be fine. He's
Yeah.
got nothing to worry about because God's gonna forgive him.
And then this boss guy, yeah, being like, "You need to forgive because it's gonna drag you down from heaven that you can't forgive this guy," which is such an unreasonable, horrific thing to say to a survivor. And then, yeah, asks that they should pray, makes the wife do it, and then talks over her the whole time, also while standing over all of them, which I also thought was weirdly, like,
It's so weird.
dominating. And then, to me, this was the kicker, put his fucking hand on
Mm.
Bonnie's head while they were praying, and it was like, "Dear Lord, we blah, blah, blah," and I was like, "You are touching a sexual assault survivor without her consent, dude, in the building where she was assaulted." Oh my, it made me I just,
It was infuriating.
Bonnie, I would like to
Yeah.
apologize on the behalf of humankind. Uh, Jesus Christ. Like, I was so mad watching that whole scene. And then when they walked out and she asked Bonnie how she felt, and she's like throwing up. And I was
Like,
like,
sick. Yeah.
damn
Yeah.
straight, dude.
I don't know if it was just trauma response or you were just being a decent person to the elders, but wow. Way to no wonder you felt sick afterwards. Good
She
grief.
might have also just been in shock, dude. I feel like if that had been me in that situation, I think I would have just been like, what in the fuck is happening right now? Like, I think sometimes that stuff is like you're kind of, it's not till later when you really start to think through the conversation that you're like, wait a minute, what the fuck did that person just say to me? It seemed like she seemed a little stunned. Or to, yeah, like you said, maybe she was just trying to be polite. I was like, all right, I'm not gonna like pop off on this
Ugh.
guy. But I think she had the right to if she had
Yeah.
wanted to. But
Oh,
yeah, that part
absolutely.
was really hard to watch, and I don't know, I thought it was really sweet that at the end they showed her again and she just, like, looked so much better and she, like, looked full of life, and
Yeah.
she was really just like, "Dude, I've healed a lot," and because she was one of the people that made a statement that was read to Bill before he passed, and that scene was rough to watch, like, them reading the victim impact statements of her and Angie, just how dismissive and shitty he was, when they're like, "We're gonna read this to you." And he's like, "Whatever,
Yeah, he's
whatever." It's
like, "I don't
just
wanna hear it." No, and I was like, "Why?" He seemed to have I don't even know if it was genuine, but some kind of, like, gratitude to Angie for,
mm.
like, "Thanks for saying this to me, so now I can apologize," but, like, why not with Bonnie?
It
I
made me yeah, I did think that was jarring, and it made me wonder if in his mind there's a difference between doing it to your own family and doing it to strangers? I don't know, like, maybe he felt more bad about doing it to his family, but also wasn't Bonnie the kid that he got busted with, and that's how he ended up actually losing his chiropractic
No,
license?
that was Christine. So that
Oh, that's right, that was
happened
Christine.
when they lived, like, in the trailer community, and he told her, "You can trust me, I'm a doctor," and
Okay,
brought her into their camper, but she's the one that took him to court.
okay.
And so with Bonnie also, Bonnie talks about one of her memories being that her brother, who was also a
Oh,
kid, a
yeah.
child, was trying to like defend her and telling Bill to leave her alone. And Bill grabbed him by the neck. So he was just like straight up child abuser. Like, yeah, I just wanted to also mention that part. He was also physically abusive towards children. Who knows? Maybe also towards his own children.
Yeah, I would probably assume so. Like, if he was doing that to some random kid, he was probably also abusing his wife and his other kids. I didn't know if that was maybe why he was more upset with Bonnie, if she had been one of the people. So, because that did come up a lot, that he did get busted many, 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 many times for abusing kids, but a lot of the times people didn't want to press charges, or, it was the fucking 70s and the charges were ridiculously small for the crimes that had been perpetrated. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up was the idea of the sex offender registry, which I don't even know when that. Sex offender registries in the United States officially began, yes, with the Jacob Wetterling Act in 1994, dude. He got out of jail in 1994 for his abuse of Christine. So I think it's important to point out that for at least, what, 30 years of his timeline when he would have been abusing kiddos, there was no sex offender registry. So he would just get in trouble and he'd just pack up and move to the next town. And I bring this up to point out the importance of legislation and laws because these things are tools that we now take for granted, like sex offender registry or Amber Alerts. These things exist because horrific fucking things happen to people and their families worked like hell to get things changed to make it better for us moving forward. And I think it's important to point out because you and I are engaged in trying to pay attention to the laws in the states that we live in. And we're talking to specialists that work all over the country who are also trying to get legislation change. And that is why the shit is important because there are things in place now that protect all of us. And there are things that could be in place that could be doing a better job protecting all of us. And if there had been a sex offender registry, how many people could this guy have been kept safe from this guy? Because people would have been able to look him up. Because he was traveling
Yeah.
all over the place. Dude, those VHS tapes of him like
Oh,
videotaping little girls and malls and shit was so creepy. And like,
so creepy. Felt
and
so
it's,
bad for those kids. Oh my god, and then at the end, well, I'm sure it was edited this way, but at the end, it's the cops that are like, "Hey, come back and visit
oh
us."
my God. Yeah.
I was like, "What?"
I felt bad for that
Uh,
cop. I was like, that poor lady cop was like, God damn it. Like, I was just at a doll expo and now I look like an idiot.
like you said, that's something that they really talk about is that after the case with the herds, he was involved in a few other cases and then none
Hmm.
resulted in anything that actually left a mark on his record, as you're mentioning. And so what he did was just go to different states.
Which is wild to think about that he had literal court cases, like multiple
Yeah.
court
And then he
cases.
was able to, so, yes. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is why it's important to know the processes. And this is why, like, in our case, we had to go to the state boards of education. So, like, because he's a chiropractor, they were able to take his license, and that lessened his access to young girls. This is why it's important to work within systems beyond criminal justice because there are other steps that can be taken that can change someone's access to victims. Unfortunately, in this piece of shit's case, he found another way. And it sounds like
Mm.
he continued to abuse or attempt to abuse pretty much his entire life. Well, didn't it sound like he got kicked out of his
I
fucking
was just about to
assisted
say that.
living
Yes.
for
Yeah. Because
abusing two girls there?
yeah, because you were
Uh,
talking about how, like in the 90s or whatever, he was doing this stuff, and I feel like I've been interrupting you enough, but I wanted to say, "Oh my god, he was still doing it." Like
mhm.
there's a point in the documentary where Debbie calls Amanda and tells Amanda that someone from the assisted living community called her and said that there's people there who aren't comfortable with him being there because he was touching kids. And so he gets kicked out of that assisted
Yeah.
living community and then goes to, I mean, it's notable. We don't see a lot of either communities, but it's notable. It's a notable difference
Oh, yeah.
of the quality of life. And that made me think of our abuser,
Mhm.
because we don't know where he is now. And he might be living in a cute apartment somewhere. Who knows? But his quality of life is different because of the decisions and choices that he made.
Yeah.
And there's a moment, oh yeah, when Amanda's asking him about like whether or not God has forgiven you. And then she asks him some kind of question about like, what do you think should happen to you? Or don't you think, oh yeah, she was asking him like, have you ever wanted to reach out and apologize to any of your victims? And he says something like, well, I just don't think I have the guts to do that. And then, in my stage of life, they could, if I acknowledge, basically saying if I acknowledge it, I could be sued, and I just don't want to spend the rest of my life in jail. And Amanda's like, well, isn't that just a consequences of the decisions that
I mean, he's just a
abusers
little
make?
punk ass bitch, dude. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's like, oh, I don't want to be held responsible for my actions. That's it. That's all it is. It's like, I want to be able to
Yeah.
do whatever I want to do. I don't want to have to think about how my actions actually impact anybody else. Same thing like when Bonnie shared her victim impact statement. hers was very poignant where she just said, like, "You seeking a few minutes of pleasure, she, like, took the soul and the spark out of a 4-year-old girl, and you didn't have the right to take that." And he just was
Mhm.
like, "Whatever. I don't wanna hear,"
Yeah,
pretty
and
much just like, "I
he
don't wanna
had
hear it.
nothing to say to her back,
Nope.
like,
Nothing to say."
he not at all,
Because he doesn't wanna think about it, because he doesn't
because he's not
view
really
other human
sorry.
no, because he doesn't view other human beings as human beings, dude, like, he just cares about himself, he's a crazy narcissist, but I did think it was, yes, very noticeable, the quality of life at the 2, places at the assisted living. This guy's, like, what, in his 80s probably, Bill? Based off the way he looks.
Yeah.
It made me think of, at some point in our process of going after our abuser, somebody tried to tell us, and it was like a police officer or an investigator. It was like an official person. It was not just some rando that, well, if we didn't get our abuser removed from the school or if we didn't get him arrested, it wouldn't really matter anyways because he'd age out soon. And I
Uh,
remember thinking, what a horrible plan. Like, don't worry, he'll just abuse a couple more kids. And then he'll get
uh-huh.
so old that nobody would be also essentially like, then he'll be too ugly. And it's like, motherfucker, he was never good looking. Like, that's never been the problem here.
And also, like, just because he's not in a school doesn't mean that he's not gonna be abusing kids.
Yeah, but it's just a
Like,
very good
there's still
example of, like, this
reason
is
oh
an
god.
80-year-old guy who is still abusing kids.
Ugh.
There is no
Yeah,
aging out, dude, like
exactly. Still doing it in his fucking retirement community.
mhm. So, anyways, I just wanted to point that out because I feel like that person really pissed me off at the time, and it just made me think of that where it's like, that's not a viable excuse or
Right.
plan.
And Bill was a fucking creepo until the very end. Like that last scene where they're playing the recordings for him. There's I think like another camera person there
Oh
and
my
he's being
god.
such a fucking creepo about her and like wanting to take her picture and then he's like shouting after her when she's trying to leave. It's like you're
So
so
creepy, dude.
obviously it's so still such just a disgusting
Mm.
person. He's like making Debbie mad on purpose and he's like, "Haha, I knew that would get to her." Like, fuck you, you're just an old dick at this point.
It's just a manipulative piece of shit. And this is why I always like to say assholes get old too. You do not have to let old people be pieces of shit to you just because they're fucking old.
No.
So fuck that. I never had respect for like people like, well, they're old. It's like doesn't give you an excuse to be a monster, dude. Like I get that you're in pain and everyone you know is dead. And that's a bummer, but like you don't have to go around being horrific to everybody. And this guy's a different category because he's just legitimately a monster. But yeah, the part where he starts trying to like hit on the camera woman is really creepy. And Amanda's pretty much just like, "Get out of here!" Like, make a run for it,
Yeah.
you know? It's just very cringy. I was shocked, I guess, in that last scene where they go back to see him for the last time, at least the last time in the documentary. I think they probably saw him, more before his actual death, but that they both still hugged him when they went into his room. I was like, "I don't think I could have done it." Like,
I know.
I don't know. And I'm not judging them for it, but
No, no, no.
I was really surprised that they both still had the capacity after, at that point, finding out that he had abused dozens of little girls, including Debbie, the mom, Angie, the sister. I don't think I could have touched that. I don't think I could have hugged that person. I think I would have been like, yo, I'm going to stay the fuck over here. I don't know. Diana, how did you feel about that?
I was thinking about that scene too because especially after like I had referred to earlier that it seemed like Amanda was really mad at him and like wanting him to feel the damage he had done, but then in that
Yeah.
moment kind of broke down and couldn't do
Hmm.
it and had her mom play the recordings. And I was also very surprised, especially after seeing him react to Bonnie's the way that he did. Like, it's very clear that this is a person who does not think he did anything wrong and who, at this end stage of his life, is not even willing to hear
Mm.
and like, or even say anything, any kind of acknowledgement to this child that he hurt, who is now an adult and still
Yeah.
feeling this damage. That might have been a little grasp at redemption, but yeah, I was surprised to see them both hug him, especially Amanda after seeing, her being so upset with him. But it made me think of my family and it made me
Hmm.
think of like there are other family members who are still living who I'm not comfortable around. And recently, like this year, like being around them, there's just something that kind of clicks in. Like one of these family members, I said, like, good to see you. And they were like, is it? And I was like, yeah, yeah. But would I really like now when looking back and I wish I, not even wish, but there's a part of me that would like to have been able to be like, actually, no, I don't have great memories of you, and
Yeah.
it's not great to see you, but here we are. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it is hard. It is hard. It's so
It's
fucking
easy
complicated.
Well, it's easy to be angry with people when you're not in the same room with them, and it is
Yeah.
easy to be strong. It's easy to be like, "This is my line in the sand," when you're not having to make eye contact with somebody in the same room. It just is, which is why everyone's mean on the internet because it's just different.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I feel like when you're actually in the same room with somebody, it's a lot harder to actually hold those boundaries, and, yeah, if you've got the family history and, yeah, he's your grandpa, like, there's always gonna be that soft spot for your grandpa, even if your grandpa's a fucking monster, obviously, but I think it just goes back to, like, the duality of this documentary of, all of this shit can be true at the same time, You can love your
Yeah.
grandpa and hate him at the same time.
I think this documentary did a really good job at a few things, but I think it did a phenomenal job at showing that it can tear families apart, like
Mhm.
acknowledging abuse, talking about incestuous abuse can tear families apart, but the alternative is just letting it keep happening and staying
Yeah.
quiet and just to keep everyone comfortable, but leaving a pathway for your own family, your own children, your own grandchildren, generation after generation to keep just having to deal with this. Just, "Oh, it's just a thing that happens. We all dealt with
Yeah.
it. Why do you not have to deal with it?" That kind of thing. It's
And I
yeah.
Yeah, I do think it's just an interesting idea of, is everybody comfortable? But I do think it's amazing how much people will avoid conflict within family, and I think it just is to the root of, we all love our family and we want to have family, and it's human nature. We're pack animals at our core. It's not safe to not have family, but sometimes your family's not safe. So,
So I would recommend this documentary. I really would. It's so beautifully made and very thought-provoking. It is very heavy and it's hard to sit through and it's going to piss you off, but I think it's a very important documentary and I think the message of it is we need to talk about it. We need to face that abuse is happening. And wasn't there like a recent article about just how
yeah,
common incest
it's bad.
is
Yeah, it's pretty
in
bad.
families? Yeah.
No, I would agree. I think it's a worth a watch. I think it's a fascinating story. And I think it really illuminates the gray areas and just how complicated abuse is and how complicated trauma is and how it can really manifest in 1,000 different ways in each person. Yeah, I would say 2 thumbs way up. It's a drag. It's a bummer, but I think it's important. And I was also saying to Carl, like, I find it kind of infuriating though that like this amazing documentary that's so well made that is also like exposing somebody who abused dozens of kids over decades of time, and I've never heard about it before. It's just, like, infuriating where it's like, this is something that actually is happening in so many households in our country. This is
Mm.
something that actually happened to dozens and dozens and dozens of people. I'm hoping that with all this Epstein file shit that's happening right now, that maybe some more people are waking up to what a ginormous problem child sexual abuses in this fucking country. It is a ginormous problem, and how unprotected kids are in so
Mm.
many situations in our culture, um, that hopefully things like this documentary can also help shine some light on.
Yes, because talk about generational trauma. We humans do not have a great track record at all when it comes to taking care of kids.
Mm-mm.
Child labor laws are new. They've
Yep.
only been around for like I don't know, 100 little maybe 200 years if not less. Like it's we
Oh, less than
let
200. Yeah.
fellow people alive in 2025, let's break the generational trauma of like just treating kids like shit and not really protecting them.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Let's fix humankind.
I think the end of the documentary, the last dedication is perfect. It says that the film is dedicated to anyone carrying the weight of secrets that they shouldn't have to keep.
Yeah.
Hey, Sarah, what's something that made you smile today? How about that?
Ooh, something that made me smile today. I am dog sitting for a friend, a adorable golden retriever, and when we came downstairs this morning, she was sleeping upside down on the couch with her feet, like,
Oh,
up against the back of the couch. It was just really weird and adorable, and she was just like, upside down. It was very adorable. So, puppy. How about you, Diana? What made
puppy.
you smile today?
Today's my goddaughter's birthday.
Oh,
She's
very nice.
9, and I saw her earlier and gave her a little gift, and, we it was my first time in a Build-A-Bear, and I saw how the bear sausage is made.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. It was nice seeing them, and seeing the next generation of big women made me smile.
Nice. Badass. Yes. Let's all help foster the next generation of big women. Let's all be protectors of some kiddos
Yes.
in our lives. Even if they're not ours, we can help protect other people's kids.
Okay, well, big hugs, everyone, and thanks for listening, and we will see you next time on Groom Scroll. Sarah, what is our next Groom Scroll?
Oh shit.
Well, come on back next time to find out what the next Groom Scroll is. Or you could also just follow our podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes, please rate, review, subscribe, follow
Leave
us
some
on
comments.
yeah, comments, follow us on Instagram. Our handle is
Blooming After Pod.
we're very accessible, so find us.
We are. And speaking of our emails and contact us form, we've been saying it's going to happen one day, listeners, and we finally have some listener emails. So we are looking forward to addressing those in a future episode. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
Okay, go go by, Bloom, go Bloom by. I was trying to say goodbye and then go Bloom at the same time, and it didn't. It came out as go by.
Okay. Well, Diana, delightful as always. Until next time. I was obsessed with Catwoman as a kid, and I used to stick my hands through black garbage bags to try to replicate the glove.
Was this at the same time that you were cutting nylons? What nylons? What are they called?
Pantyhose?
Pantyhose in
Nylons. What are you,
half.
80?